From Cal State Fullerton, Southern California Politics This Week starts right now. Welcome to Southern California Politics This Week. I'm Josh Gross. Okay, panel, our first issue. LA City Council member David Ryu has a very controversial proposal to ban special interest contributions to campaigns. Kirk Kartosian, is this something we're ever going to see?
It's not the first time it's been attempted. It won't be the last. It's an admirable pursuit, but there are a number of stakeholders, not only on his council, but amongst labor unions and other community groups, business interests who have something else to say. So I'll be curious to see if he's able to get a committee together to push it on the council.
Bill Lockyer, 40 years in California politics. You've seen this movie before, right?
Yeah, I actually authored bills like that years ago, but it's impractical for two reasons. First is you evade it by establishing independent expenditure committees with money, and they can spend in unlimited amounts, so it doesn't work. Secondly, it limits the office holder or candidate's fundraising to ideological or ethnic money. And the consequence is the consensus building culture we want to create is injured because of the polarization that results.
You're a former Attorney General. Do you think it's constitutional? Is there any issues in terms of limiting speech, in terms of limiting contribution?
Depending on how restrictive the limits are, you can probably do it. You can't stop the independent expenditure from raising and spending unlimited amounts, and that's the legal issue.
Ana Maria Quintana, welcome. You were elected in the city of Bell after a very well-publicized corruption scandal. But in that case, it wasn't so much contributions that were the issue. It was more what the council was up to. What's your take on this bill?
I actually don't even think it's possible at the moment in light of the Supreme Court ruling with Citizens United. At that point, it's protecting freedom, First Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. So because you have that essentially ruling, I don't see that any other policy would be able to.
And of course, you talk about Citizens United, corporations are people. So that obviously was one of the holdings of that, and obviously that affects where this is going to go. Jeremy Yamaguchi, youngest elected official in Orange County, welcome.
Thank you.
What's your take on this?
I think it won't only pass, but I think it's a bad idea. I think for the transparency out there, if we're going to restrict funds for campaigns, we're not going to know where the money's coming from. Versus if we can see, we've all seen the ads where NASCAR drivers have all their ads all over their uniforms. If we can see that on the paper trail where the money's coming for these campaigns, we can then see who's influencing the politicians and why they're voting certain ways.
Bill mentioned IEs, and obviously you're never going to ban independent expenditures. So Kirk, you think, is that what pretty much invalidates this, is that there's always some way around it? Even if this were to pass, labor, any of these groups, political parties, they're going to find a way in to donate.
Yeah, I can't add much more than that. It's absolutely the case. And usually IE monies in large races outpace 2, 3, 5, 10 times what the monies of the campaigns are raising themselves.
Money is like the force of gravity in our society,
sure,
and it's hard to write rules that defy it.
Right.
I think another thing to highlight, though, is you have to put it in context in which election. I mean, my city is a very small city. It's 2.5 square miles, 40,000 people. So when you're working with jurisdictions that are much smaller, I think limitations might be able to assist.
Right. And Jeremy, again, but pretty much are you against all limits on contributions, or do you still think there should be a cap depending on the race?
I think there should be limits, but when it comes to freedom of speech and being able to donate from groups that are organized specifically for advocating for their beliefs, I think those should not be restricted. So I think more important is the transparency to see where's the money coming from versus having it be funneled through back channels, IEs that aren't as public and aren't as transparent to the public.
Sure. Now, with a candidate like David Ryu who just got elected, and he ran as very much a reformer candidate, Kirk, do you think, is it fair to say that whether it passes or not, he wins? I mean, he's able to go to his supporters and say, look, I tried, they voted me down.
Yes and no. Amongst his supporters, possibly, but amongst his colleagues, it's very likely he's losing political capital. I'm sure his intentions were very earnest. As someone wet behind the ears, you come on council and you want to start doing things, and then you realize the institution, the bureaucracy, but also the politics, and maybe some good thought from and previous attempts were worth taking a stronger look at. So I think it could hurt him amongst his colleagues, even though it could look good to the public eye.
Well, Ana Maria, we were talking about how you got elected as part of a new slate and a new day in Bell. Is it inevitable, though, as a challenger candidate, as a reformer, you never can go as far as you want to? I mean, obviously the bureaucracy and the powers that be will always limit you somewhat. So you think too much expectation for a candidate like that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm kind of known as the independent candidate in my city. One of the things that I think we have to highlight about this proposition is that it's bringing up dialogue. And I think because people are becoming much more aware, I mean, let's put it in context. In the US, people don't vote. So just having this dialogue alone is kind of giving credibility and much more strength to the power of the vote. People don't have money, but they can vote.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I can attest to her being the independent member of her council. Definitely a free thinker there.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
That's good. Bill, I want to give a quick shout out. You're being honored this weekend. The San Francisco Bay Trail, part of it is being named after you. Can you tell us just a little bit about the Bay Trail and how you got involved in that issue?
Well, it's a bike or a recreational path walking that travels entirely around the bay, 500 miles. It's about 2/3 completed, so we keep working on pieces of it. It's a nice thing. I was sort of the godfather and carried the original legislation to set it up.
Was there controversy at the time?
No.
So it was pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah. The controversy is really certain segments that people wanted to develop or their military installation,
Sure.
NASA, things that were hard to get through.
Sure. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Be a good time. Okay, issue number 2. We're going to discuss, we have a new speaker coming in Sacramento. Anthony Rendon will be taking over in January as a new speaker. Kirk Kartosian, you were actually his landlord at one point. So tell us the story.
I was not his landlord. I was the broker representing the building that,
Close enough.
that
Go
his
ahead.
organization was a member of. Anthony, I think, is a great guy, and I don't share his party. I'm an independent myself, but I think he's the exact type of person who should be at the helm there at this point in time in California state politics. I think he has a genuine interest in trying to work across the aisle, and I know him to be a pretty free and critical thinker. He came, at least his organization, Plaza de la Raza, which he was the executive director of, was in Southeast LA County. He knows our area in particularly well, which
Right.
is nice. Lives in Southgate, but I think he'll have really good interest for the state as a whole, and I'm excited just to see him have that opportunity.
Bill, you've been through quite a few speaker changes over the years. Does a new speaker always bring in his or her set of priorities that are different than the person before?
Well, they're collective, so he represents a lot of people that helped elect him. So that tends to mean you have a statewide view with lots of issues, but the prevailing ones are the continuing education, healthcare, jobs, clean environment. Those sort of transcend speakers. They have their own tone and maybe priorities, but that basically you can predict similar results. He's very smart, works hard, and is a person who can solve problems, so I'm looking forward to good progress.
Do you think now with the longer term limit, obviously he's going to be able to be speaker longer than the last few have, and for a while there it was every 2 years you'd have a new speaker almost.
Yep.
So do you think that's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing. As somebody who thinks term limits are more harmful than helpful, I'm glad that they're extended. So I think it means he and other leaders will be there longer to learn the job, do the job well.
Jeremy Yamaguchi, as our Republican on our panel here, what is the plan, do you think, to rebuild the Republican Party? Obviously the numbers are a little down in the state assembly. What is the plan there?
I think we really need to visit our grassroots, and that's how I won at the age of 19, was going back to the grassroots and knocking on doors and being face to face with people. I think Republicans need to focus on that now more than ever, to go back and really build up the brand and build up the party not from the top down and trying to force policies and tell people what to think, but instead to pull them in and explain to them, hey, this is what the Republican Party is. It's the party of the people, and it's the grand old party. And I think that's where we need to go back to.
Bill, you remember in the 90s when you had almost a 50-50 legislature at one point, and the Republican Party is much stronger in the assembly. What do you think it is? Why do you think the brand is melted down, so to speak, in terms of?
Well, so a lot of it is just the demographic changes in California with more Latinos, Latinas, Asians that have been predominantly Democratic, and some were the divisive issues that propelled people, like Prop 187 and others.
Anna Maria, a big win for the Latino caucus. What do you think of that?
I think so. I mean, let's put it in context. I mean, we're going to have Kevin De Leon, Ricardo Lara, Anthony Rendon, he represents my area. And then in addition, and when you add in the fact that Hilda Solis now represents Southern California, I think there's a huge powerhouse that's definitely going to allow for a lot of discussion that hasn't been discussed in the past. It'll be interesting to see how the Republican Party is going to react now, considering the changes
Sure.
in leadership now.
Sure. Well, and a lot of outreach, I know, to those various communities, because obviously that's the key to getting elected, at least in modern day California. In terms of registering Latinos, I know obviously it's a much discussed topic, why Latinos don't vote in larger numbers. What have you found in Bell? I mean, what have you seen face to face there?
I honestly don't think that Bell is any different from the rest of the country. I mean, voter participation in the U.S. is very low. It's less than 15%. Bell is actually at par with the nation. We're interested definitely in getting Latinos united so that we can, at the very least, come out to the polls. And I think it's going to change, especially in light of all the publicity that has been taken around the Republican Party when you have Donald Trump speaking the way that he is, and we have also Spanish TV that's addressing issues that pertain directly to us. So I think there's going to be greater participation next year. At least I'm very hopeful that there is.
Kirk Kartosian, the Armenian community used to vote very conservatively. Now, would you say it's a swing vote, or how would you describe the Armenian community vote?
It's complicated, and much like any other ethnic enclave group, it really is dependent on who the candidate is. As much as groups will claim that they don't show any bias, the Armenian community will get excited if there's an Armenian candidate. When Governor Deukmejian first ran, I believe in the 70s or maybe even 60s, there were a lot of transition re-registrants from the Democratic Party to the Republican one. Today, I think with a lot of immigrants within the last 20 or 30 years from all parts of the world of Armenian descent coming to California, many of them, most of them, are Democratic registered voters, and those who have been here longer, maybe the Fresno Armenians,
sure,
as we call them, by and large are Republican, and many of them are not even Armenian speaking like they are in my hometown of Glendale.
Yeah. Bill, in terms of the massive changes in demographics in California, I mean, did you ever think you'd see a day, even as a partisan Democrat, where no Republican would get elected to a statewide office in California? I mean, it's really tremendous changes demographically.
Well, it hasn't been that many years since there was Arnold Schwarzenegger or whomever, so I expect there'll be cyclical changes.
Does that count?
I think so.
Yeah.
But it is pretty amazing how overwhelmingly Democratic the state is now. I served with Jim Brulte, who's the current Republican Party chair. We're very good friends, and we used to, when we were in the Senate together, try to figure out how to govern together and do bipartisan things. There's less need, unfortunately, to do that now, and I think it's something we need.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could jump in, my former boss, Kurt Pringle, was for a very short time, maybe eight months, Speaker of the State Assembly. So I think he was the last person from his party to serve in that role.
Correct.
But it's a challenge. Going back somewhat to our earlier discussion, I think a lot of Republicans in California are maybe more social, liberal on social issues, and they're caught in the wedge of the national political game and having to defend, especially with social media, having to defend positions that might not be their personal own, but they might be that by and large of the party, the greater party politics.
Well, I want to ask Jeremy that. I mean, how do you deal with Republican voters who say, look, I'm with you on the conservatives, I'm fiscal conservative, but you lose me on the social stuff? How do you respond to people?
It's really important that, at least from my generation, that we be active in the party. And that's the problem now is, the people that are retired that have been active in politics for a number of years are the ones running the party. I'm not saying they're not doing a good job, but if the young people want to make a difference, we can't just complain about we need to do something, and that's what I did. Jumped into politics, got on the state Republican Party, and I've been champion, to move forward. It's the next generations and the new people getting involved.
Sure, no, and they need younger people like you involved in the party. Okay, third issue. Los Angeles is being considered for the 2024 Olympics, as everybody at this panel knows. We're going to get to our predictions when I'm done, but first, Kirk Kartosian. First of all, is LA going to win this thing? We're going up against Paris, Rome, Hamburg, and Budapest, of all places. What do you think our chances look like?
It depends on, there's politics at all levels, not to mention.
And that's why we're here on Southern California Politics this week.
So Casey Wasserman has put out a pretty good effort for the LA to be the host committee. There are a couple of other efforts where, the United States of America is trying to bring World Cup back in 2022. And so with that and maybe a 2024 bid for the Olympic Games, there's even an LA World's Fair effort to basically be, to hold those bookends in between those 2 years. I think LA has a pretty good resume, and I think we're we're going to have a good shot at it.
Bill, what do you think? LA's chances?
Well, who knows? But it looks pretty good. The proposal looks pretty good. The criticisms, I think, are fair, but it also looks like the mayor and council have done a good job of trying to control and avert any cost overruns and city liabilities that would be bad.
Anna Maria.
I agree. I'm actually interested in seeing what the process is as a whole. I mean, if we're envisioning the Olympics to resemble like 1984 Olympics, then by all means, I think the community would definitely favor it. However, if there's expenditures involved from the city, I don't think the community would definitely favor that. And quite honestly,
I
it's
went
not
to some of
something
the
I
84
favor.
games. Did you too? You remember I was about 10
Absolutely.
years old at the time.
Dodger
Yeah.
Stadium,
Yeah.
USC,
I was a little girl then.
The big
aquatics.
thing, of course, that they promoted at the time was, work from home, don't come to work, and the freeways were wide and open, and it was a dream. Whether we can do that again today, I don't know. Jeremy Yamaguchi, what do you say?
If you look at China and the amount of infrastructure investment they made there, it wasn't just a city or a state that was investing and trying to lobby for that. It was an entire nation.
Yeah.
I think the only way LA is going to get it is if the entire nation unites behind the idea of bringing it back to the United States and back to LA.
Right.
Well, Boston, pulling out. may
Boston
help.
pulled out mainly because of the cost.
Right.
So, I mean, this is definitely an issue, and also that, it sounds like a great idea. Sometimes when you start doing the math, it's a totally different issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
But LA does have the infrastructure
They do,
for
they
such,
definitely,
for such
yeah.
an endeavor.
Bill, why is the Bay Area never on the short list for Olympics? Is something
They
that-
tried.
Yeah.
They've tried a couple of times. It's
Yeah.
hard geographically because the bay cuts it
Right.
up, and so you wind up with venues spread all around.
And you need so much infrastructure. I mean, it's all of these different games, housing, transportation, obviously. And I know they're now fast tracking or trying to fast track some of the metro projects to compete with that. Kirk, you think it's realistic?
I think that's part of the political effort that may assist LA in expediting some of these slippery slope projects that may or may not get funding. An Olympic Games would seriously help the politics that occur countywide at SCAG or other groups. To
What
say.
is SCAG? Tell our viewers. Not everybody knows.
Southern California Association of Governments,
Okay.
when we served in elected office, or these
Yeah.
individuals and myself, it's broken up by regions in Southern California. Basically, it's a government of governments. My professors at USC Real Estate School were not big fans of SCAG.
Because why? Because it's too theoretical and it's not.
Yeah, it was 30,000 foot level thinking and policy. I think there's some redeeming qualities, but a lot of it is has its challenges as well. But a lot of the efforts to push transportation projects at Metro and other governing bodies have to go through a constrained regional plan at SCAG.
Sure, and that's what it does. Okay, predictions. Anything coming up? What does our panel think? Kirk, go ahead.
For anything at all,
Anything coming up? What prediction?
I'm going to make a prediction that that Los Angeles is going to get the LA World's Fair, and that it's.
Now, what does that mean for the region if we get it?
It means the same things we're talking about, but it's in a private enterprise with a crowdfunding effort, which is working. It's a independent body that will bring and use pods throughout Southern California to allow for our diversity of cultures
Interesting.
and interests to be shared with the world. And I'm going to make a prediction that LA will get that, and it'll be known within the next couple of years.
Got it, Bill.
In the area of politics and policy, huge tax fight on the next November election, that is of
interesting.
16,
Okay.
with maybe competing, but at least controversial efforts to continue or extend or expand taxes in California.
Now, is that
I
because they've
predict
gotten
they're
used to
gonna
it?
fail,
Okay, yeah.
But they'll be on the ballot.
Okay, but when there's a temporary sales tax or whatever, you're
That
saying they get used
expires
to it.
next year.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they want that money.
Yep.
And you think it's going to be a big fight?
Yep.
Anna Maria.
Predictions. I think the Los Angeles County Supervisor Board
Okay.
is going to consist of majority female.
Interesting.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see.
Okay, so you're talking about Janice Hahn in District
Yes.
4. What's going to happen out in Kirk's Glendale, District 5? It's a wide open race there.
Maybe he's the one that can speak on it.
Tell
a
us,
little bit
Kirk,
better.
who do you think it's
Why
going to
are
come
you
down?
running?
Why am I not? I'm running. I'm not running for. I run from now.
Have you endorsed any candidates in that race?
I have not. I think there are some reputable candidates. I think they have to. It's going to come down to money and reputation.
Mitch Englander, obviously a strong
Mitch
candidate.
Englander, I think,
yeah.
is the front runner.
Yeah.
Ara Najarian in Glendale has maybe the Armenian recognized name, but
Yeah.
I don't think that'll be enough to carry that district.
Yeah,
And
maybe
obviously,
Bob Huff, yeah.
Bob and Antonivich's
Yeah, chief deputy.
staff.
Regardless of that result,
Yeah.
we have Sheila Kuehl and
Right.
Hilda Solis, and now with John Essan.
3 out of 5.
That's 3.
Big changes.
Could be
Yeah.
4.
You
I
got
know,
it.
that's what I'm saying.
Could be 4.
But 3
Jeremy.
is majority.
I think we're going to keep our districts here, the Assembly and Republican Senate seat in Orange County, but I think bigger perspective-wise, I think Republicans are going to take the presidential White House bid this year.
Interesting. How are they going to vote in California?
They're not going to vote Republican. but
Okay. Well, it's still a donor state, though.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
You're going to fight hard for this Fullerton seat.
The Fullerton seat is going to be, we're not going to be definitely not on the back burner.
Yeah.
It's
Who's
going
it
to be in the
gonna be?
forefront.
Yeah. Well, that's a question. We're going to find out soon. You got any predictions on that, or
For
for the Fullerton seat?
I do not yet.
Okay.
No.
But it's going to be a fight. I mean, the last one I think was $2 million spent. So
It is,
It's
yeah.
definitely interesting when now Orange County is a swing seat.
It's one of the big ones on the radar.
You got it. All right. We'll see you next time on Southern California Politics This Week.